There's good old Giles driving. He's just taking me down to the mighty port of Felixstowe, where I shall walk down the beach and catch the ferry to Harwich. Hopefully it won't rain today, but I'm going to have a little run around between Harwich, Shotley and back to Felixstowe and just kind of see how it goes. This is what we might call a bit of an impromptu travel. I decided to do this at about I don't know, about 10 to 10 when I was in the shower, and it's now 10:25 and Giles is motoring me down post haste to the port. So today you're joining me for a day out. I think I deserve a day off, and I'm on the loose with Dot taking care of her granddaughters. I've got my bus pass, a few quid in my pocket, and no fixed plans, but a very rough idea of just where I may go. It was a pretty dull and overcast day, but at least it didn't rain and wasn't too windy. The ferry trip from my hometown of Felixstowe to Harwich takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's a different viewpoint for most passengers. There's plenty of room on the boat itself, although the wheelhouse must get a bit cramped if it's raining. The town of Harwich is almost surrounded by the sea, and it's been a port for hundreds of years with varying degrees of success. It's the headquarters of the local harbour authority and a base for Trinity House, the National Navigation Authority, so there's a lot of maritime history here. It's also still a port for commercial shipping. Navy Yard Wharf still welcomes roll-on roll-off ferries, although you can't see much of them from the streets. The town itself is quite small, a handful of quiet streets with a few shops and pubs, many fewer of both than there were not so many years ago. I lived here once years ago. That's the house, the one with the red door. And here's a place I never visited when I lived there, St Nicholas Church, just a few steps away. There's been a church on the site since 1177, and it's named for St Nicholas, the patron saint of sailors. Christopher Jones, master of the Mayflower, was married in the original building, but it was rebuilt in 1821. Outside used to be the place to go after church, the Three Cups, one of the town's defunct pubs. And not far from the mural, the Electric Palace, a very original cinema built in 1911 and still showing films. The mural was originally designed by local artist Brian Rowland and painted by students. It's been there so long that some of the ships and scenes now have a historical interest, and the locals love it. Harwich also has its own town beach, running from the Harbour Pilot's Pier to the Harbour Breakwater. Don't be fooled by the beaches around the corner from that. They belong to Dovercourt, a much more modern town and resort attached to the port town of Parkston Quay. If you're still in the mood for a bit more history, here's a treadmill-driven crane, first used in 1667 at the Navy Yard Wharf. And here's Harwich's low light, one of a pair of leading lights which used to guide ships into harbour, and its matching high light is way back in the town. Coming in from the sea, ship captains would line up the two lights one over the other to follow the deepest water into harbour. But eventually the sand spit on the northern side, Landguard Point, extended itself to block off this approach. After the lights became known as the misleading lights, they were taken out of service in 1862. I think the main streets of the town really do take you back in time. They're the right width for horses and carts rather than cars, and the buildings actually represent a guide to house building over hundreds of years. It's quite sad to see how many shops and pubs are out of business though. On this Monday there was only one pub in the town that seemed to be open at lunchtime. After a surprisingly expensive sausage and chips from the only chippy in town, it was time to meander back to the ferry for the next stage of my journey. Over the harbour again to Shotley. This ferry trip costs £3, but it's only half price for bus pass holders. Good news for me. It's quite brief, but again you get that different viewpoint. And that's what you call something of a result. I've just had a ride across the harbour to Shotley on the ferry again from Harwich. And when I got there, what do I see before me but a very nice Ipswich buses bus that I'm going to catch and go to Ipswich. And then hopefully I should find a bus to Felixstowe. But before I catch that, I'm going to have a pint. So that's my day out around my local patch. I left home at 10:15 and came back by about 5:30. I spent a grand total of £8.49 including food and drink and had a fascinating time.